Good day, grade 12 learners, and welcome to today's program. This is your English home language lesson brought to you by the Department of Education in collaboration with Cybono Discovery Center. My name is Vash Thuchit, and we're dealing with your English home language paper 1 revision skills. Remember, we did say we're going to be focusing on your exam prep for paper 1. And then we're going to finish up today with paper 1 and move into paper 3 in the next 2 to 3 weeks as well. All right, so we'll be covering all the things you need to know with regards to the major part of paper 1, which is a comprehension, and then the summary. I'm going to give you some quick tips as well as some hints to make sure that you can maximize every single opportunity you have to get the maximum marks as well. All right, so let's look at today's lesson in terms of comprehension skills and how to tackle the comprehension passage in the exam paper. Remember, grade 12s, it's a 30-mark question, which means we're testing your general knowledge in terms of what you know about a given topic in the exam setup, and you need to break down that article, what that content of that article is, to make sense of it. So decode the message and then give us your responses to the questions we ask you. All right, so what we found over the years is some very worrisome problems that the grade 12s have been facing. And I'm sure you've come across this also as you've been practicing. So please try and avoid it by making sure that you've practiced the last 5 to 6 years of papers, the NSC papers, where you take your paper, you answer the question, and then you check against the memo, which is on the necessary sites that you have access to. All right, and also if all else fails, you have your teachers who are there to guide you through on how to answer the comprehension text. Okay, so go over those question words as well. So in general, we find that candidates are able to cope in terms of dealing with concepts of the passage. But it does help that you become aware of any other social issues or political issues or current events that are currently happening in the social media as well as in the real world around you. Okay, when I say real world, I mean the world that you are finding yourself operating within. There are definitely issues that are current and trending that are affecting you directly or indirectly. So become aware of those issues. All right, so the current events are very important. Further on to that, we find that when a learner finds a topic sentence, for example, they can see it, yes, but not all the time. So you need to make sure that when you are having that passage, you find the topic sentence and you highlight it, all right? Because that is where the important information is. And then you can break down that to make sense of what the argument is, right? Thereafter, also please remember that we will be looking at the questions set out in a sense where they are sequential. All right. And when I say we, I mean the examiners, all right? The whole national examining body. So those examiners are looking at the questions being sequential. So it's based on the order of the passage. So it'll say, for example, refer to paragraph 1. Then you'll say inline, whatever, da 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 da. So it is giving you a guideline to look in that particular paragraph for the answer. Or it's leading you to that paragraph saying, look at this line or look at this word reference and then bring in other information that's linked to that particular paragraph or line. All right, so no content is or should be repeated across questions. Now, a quotation also will be given in a question. So that is an indication that the examiner expects you to translate that quotation into your own words. So again, you decoding the quotation to make sense of it and then putting it into your own words. And then when you have understood what that quotation is saying, you then applying it, that knowledge, to the question that is in front of you. All right. Thereafter, some other things that you need to be aware of is that the mark allocation. Now you will notice I've got them in different color fonts, different color on the screen because it's important information, okay? So firstly, your mark allocation, grade 12s, it is a guideline in the sense that it says, for example, if there's 2 marks or 3 marks, we are looking for certain things. So when we're saying a 2 mark is allocated for that particular question, we are saying that we want you to give us one idea. All right, that's well explained, obviously, for those 2 marks. So that is generally your entry level questions, okay? Then when we're saying where a question is allocated 3 marks. Now we used to have a question with 4 marks before, but it could appear again, it may not appear, but definitely when we're having the 3 marker, you need to know that we want 2 ideas well explained, all right? And there must be evidence supporting that ideas that you are speaking about in that answer. All right, then also questions focusing on diction, which is the choice of words. In other words, the words that the writer is using. He's using it for a particular reason. So when we're talking about questions on diction, when we're talking about style, in terms of whether it's a formal or informal register and style, all those things come into play. And then when we're looking at imagery, which is questions focusing on, for example, figures of speech or parts of speech, all right? That is important in paper 1. So these kind of technical terms we're dealing with, those need to be based upon the relevant quotation from the resource, which is then explained in the context of the passage. So it'll be saying, look at a particular line reference, for example, the words that the author or the writer has used in this paragraph, and then explain it in your own words in relation to what the topic is talking about. All right? So they need to be molded towards what was the intention of the author in that paragraph or the writer in that paragraph. So what was his intended message to us in that paragraph? All right, so everything, we're not looking for just the general definition. You have to take the definition of that and apply it in context of the work that is being tested here. Now the verbs of questioning. That is referring to such terms like explain, justify, comment, discuss, critically comment, for example. These are very much used in all of the papers that you have seen or you are about to see. So please, you gotta go back and familiarize yourself with what does each of those terms mean, firstly. In other words, what does the examiner expect of me in a response when he uses the word comment or when he uses the word discuss or explain? Okay? Am I supposed to have maybe a discussion given? Am I maybe supposed to identify that part of speech in relation to something? Those are the kind of questions you need to be focusing on. And that is now moving along, remember, the Barrett's taxonomy, where we start testing you from your level 1 entry level questions, where you're just recalling information. We're then going into a little bit of an understanding, where we go into the reorganization one, that's your level 2, level 3, 4, and 5, definitely going into more of having your opinion and be able to justify it. And thereafter, we're looking at the level 5 question, where we're saying, what is the impact of that particular idea or that particular part of speech or that particular statement? What's the effect of it on you as the reader, in this case being the audience? Okay, so this is where we're moving in the Barrett's taxonomy, from the entry levels 1 and 2 up until 3, 4, and 5, dealing with the impact. Okay, so please go back and revise those terms. Then candidates also previously, they failed to keep their responses in reference to the specific paragraph or the line that the examiner was referring them to. So please don't go and give us a holistic view of the text. If we're saying look at line 13 in text A, for example, we mean look at line 30 in text A, not the entire paragraph or not the entire passage. Okay, so in some cases what candidates would do is they just summarize the paragraph and text B without also drawing the link between paragraph A, for example, paragraph 2, for example, and text B. So please, when we're having this question of comparing two things, either paragraph 1 from text A and text B, or particularly maybe a statement from from text A with text B, please draw reference to both of them and then show us the link that exists between text A and text B. Remember, please, in English HL, we always have a link between text A and text B. So you need to find that link for you to understand where the examiner is going with this. All right, so some recommendations for you as the batch that's sitting now for your prelims and your finals. The type of questions which have appeared in the previous editions of this paper, such as the explanation of the usage of a question in terms of a text, the impact of a single sentence paragraph. So this is what you need to be focusing in terms of what has happened previously. It may not happen this year, but if it does appear, all right, then you know how to handle it. So the usage of a question in terms of a text is important. Okay, look at that explanation. Look at the impact that a single sentence paragraph has. Now that's usually where we're saying the intention of the author becomes very clear in that single line paragraph. All right, then, or single sentence in this instance. The next thing is looking at the impact of the diction that is used. So he's used certain words for a specific reason. You need to identify what's the reason for using those words and how is it relevant to the content that is being discussed. Then look at your other terms that you have studied over the years, grade 12s. Irony, paradox, oxymorons, for example, homonym, antonym, synonym. All these things, or all these terms, will appear. And then look at the standard comparative summary question. It has appeared numerous times. And if you know how to handle that comparison question, which is usually the last question in the comprehension, then you well on your way to get that 3 to 4 marks in that question. All right? More important, please also learn your generic stylistic devices, okay? And then link this to the question in context. So your major word for you to be aware of is context. Contextualize. Everything you are reading in the text A and the questions you have been asked on text A has to be contextualized to the content of text A. So for example, when we say, in your opinion, would you say da? For example, that kind of question. We're saying, yes, you're allowed to have an opinion, but that opinion needs to come back into line with what the text is saying. However, grade 12s, if you fervently believe that your opinion is justified and you can find the relevant information to give us an answer there, then do it. And then hopefully when the markers are marking, they're able to see your idea and credit you for that. But do not make the mistake of giving us an idea that's so far-fetched from what the content is talking about and then expect to get marks. It's not going to happen. All right? So contextualize what you are reading. Example of that. The writer's use of a single line paragraph is, as I said to you, usually dealing with the purpose or his intention on what he's saying here. his main idea of what he's saying here, his argument. Okay, right. So the validity of the writer's conclusion is important. Look at the reasons why the writer starts a particular paragraph with a question. Now, we always talk about the rhetorical question. Why is it there? Yes, we all know it's there to, for example, let us think further, all of those things. But don't just say a general answer that to think further. About what? Contextualize those kind of things, okay? Right, look at the reasons why he's used that rhetorical device. Then please always look at the visual component of the comprehension question, which is text B usually, because that does not focus on the skills of visual literacy. So take it out of your head. It's not talking about what you study word question 3 and 4, okay? Here instead, we are testing a content-based question. So we're drawing a link between text A and text B. There has to be the link there, which you need to be focusing on. All right. Your visual and verbal cues convey the message of the cartoon, for example, okay? And that is not dealing with the comprehension. The verbal cue is defined as anything spoken as opposed to written or relating to words in general. In the classroom, however, verbal typically is used to refer to any form of written dialogue present in the cartoon, as opposed to visual, which refers to the visual composition. In other words, what do you see? All right, and I see that the gremlin has visited me, so I'm going to just take 1 minute and be back with you right now.
Excellence. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
All right, and the gremlins have left us for now. So let's get back into the lesson. So we were talking about the visual component here. Remember in the classroom, the verbal. Remember, usually we would say verbal typically is used to refer to any form of written dialogue, okay, present in a cartoon where the two characters are talking to each other, all right, as opposed to a visual, which reveals or talks about the visual composition and content of the cartoon. All right, don't get too confused about that. We'll focus a bit, or we've done that previously, but you can go back and look at that when dealing with adverts and cartoons. All right. Then, when you're looking at the comprehension passage, please remember the conclusion, it's there for a reason. Now, you know, when you're writing paper 3 and you have done your essay, you formulate the conclusion, and the conclusion is usually when you're tying up your argument or tying up your storyline. All right. In this instance, remember, the author now is linking the significant points of what he said throughout the passage to his conclusion. So here his major points are now being surmised or put to rest. So also please consider the final appeal of the conclusion. Why did he conclude the passage in this particular way and not in another way, for example? These are examples where you need to think deeper about what's being said. Don't accept a face value understanding of the text. You got to delve deeper to get a more in-depth meaning of what this author is saying. All right, so that is in connection with the conclusion. Then please also remember the quotations are evidence for an answer. It's not an answer on its own. So they'll give you a quote directing you to a kind of idea they want you to formulate, and then you put that into your own words, link it to the content of the text, and give your answer on that. Okay, good. Right, then the comparison question I said to you, which is either maybe question 11 or question 12, depending on how many questions they test in the comprehension passage. There, the primary point of each passage or each text must be summarized, please. All right, and then they must be compared to each other. Now, when dealing with that question, I did mention to you, and I'm putting all these points up here so you can read them at one go as well with me, is summarizing the main ideas or the themes in the paragraph indicated in text A, for example. Okay, so you read, is he wanting me to go to paragraph 9, for example, or is he talking about text A holistically? You will get that with the question that is asked. So you summarize the main idea of that part of text A. All right, then we summarize the gist of text B, keeping in mind the overall main idea of the passage, that's text A. All right, then look for the link or the similarities between text A and text B. Okay, and once you have got that, the link is usually between, for example, a selected paragraph and text B, and you need to find that, and that comes from the question. Link it and then explain to us how those two either that paragraph and that text B are similar. Okay, explain the how there, please. Right, so I have taken you through a lot of recommendations and issues we found so far. So remember, comprehension is about comprehending particular content. So it means my understanding of what I am reading. I need to be able to take that text, digest it, break it down into simpler terms or simpler ideas, and then put it into my own answers when I'm answering the question, my own words. So remember, it has two parts, text A and text B. Text A is the written text and text B is usually the visual one. So grade 12, please, if you are struggling with reading at a particular pace, you need to start practicing to read faster. Okay, and make sure that you can read between 700 and 800 words in an expected time frame to be having enough time then to answer the questions based on that particular text. So practice will always make it better. All right, practice makes perfect, as you know. So the exam questions based on these two texts, that's text A and text B, will test your ability to make sense of what you've read and to respond to it, to test your understanding between the literal or the denotative meaning of words, and then moving into the figurative or the connotative meaning of those words used in the text. Then it will also test your ability to understand the writer's intention and the reason for why he wrote that particular text. You will then be able to also, from that, appreciate the context or the text that's given to you, and then reach conclusions on that particular topic that we are dealing with to form your own opinions about what you have read. Then we're also going to say, at the end of the day, it is testing your ability to evaluate the effectiveness of the text in terms of its purpose. So what I'm saying to you is, you write something with a particular purpose in mind, and you achieve it by the end of that. We want to see, when you have read someone else's work, can you find their intention? And can you say to us, he has either reached his intention or not? Or can you then say, his intention in writing this was either valid or invalid, and why was that the case? So that is how you need to focus in terms of the comprehension. So a quick strategy for you to use when you are dealing with the comprehension passage is the following. Please, firstly, skim through the passage quickly. In other words, when you skim through the passage, each of the paragraph, you will get an overall idea of the article, or an outline of what the article is saying to you. And then while you're doing that, try and visualize in your head what each of those paragraphs is saying to you. Then please, while doing that, remember to take the title and keep that as a clue to make you or make it easier for you to match what is being said to that title in each of the paragraphs. Then the introduction, please, that is there for a reason. We would say it hooks you in, it grabs you, yes, but it also captures your attention and creates that atmosphere for what is to follow. So it creates a setting, and obviously then takes us through what's going to come further. So 3 important points here. Read the first paragraph carefully. Secondly, this paragraph provides us with information on what the text is about, so that's very important. And then this is also where the major themes are introduced to us and then developed in paragraph 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example, going on. Right? Then the last paragraph, remember I said to you, usually contains the conclusion. Read it very carefully. This sums up the entire article or what is being argued in that particular article. So it's basically going to encourage you as a reader to respond to what has been talked about in that particular text. Please, grade 12s, link the last paragraph and the first paragraph to each other, because that is then taking the golden link from the introduction all the way to the conclusion right through. You follow it if you understand what the introduction is, what the conclusion is, and follow the line of thought, which is the golden thread throughout the remaining paragraphs. Okay? As you read, please consider both the literal and figurative meaning, as I've said to you, denotative, dictionary meaning, to connotative meaning, implied meaning, for example. For example, there's given one there to you, the story touched my soul. It doesn't mean that the story actually touched your physical soul. No, but figuratively, it is saying the impact, the emotional impact that the story had on me is the touch that I am referring to there. Okay, so you're looking at the impact, and that's where that level 5 questioning comes in. So now you're in the exam setup, you've received your question paper, you've taken the 10 minutes, you have now read the passage during that first 10 minutes that you are given as reading time. And if you had a little bit of extra time, you went through the rest of the paper as well. But if you're struggling with time management, use that 10 minutes effectively, as opposed to looking up in the sky and looking for some kind of answer. All right. So when you get the paper, the 10 minutes, read, skim, scan the comprehension passage. Now, when dealing with the comprehension, please do not repeat the question in your answer. It doesn't show any understanding from your side. Okay? Write your answers in full sentences so that the marker gets the entire idea of what you are talking about here. Respond only with the information that is required of you. Don't go on a limb and decide something else that's not relevant to the text. I did mention the mark allocation given to you. Please use it as a guideline of where to go with the answer. 2 marks, 1 main idea, thoroughly thrashed out for us there. And if you're getting a 3 marker, you're going to give us 2 ideas, also well developed with a comment as to why it's relevant or not relevant. When you're asked for your view, please ensure a substantiation is given. And I said to you here, do not take the justification so far away that the link between what you're saying and the text is very unclear. So make sure it's clear that the link is there and the justification is valid to what you are saying. All right. So step 1, skim through the passage. Read the passage whilst linking the content and the title together. Encourage yourself to ask leading questions to yourself. For example, what is being said here? Where is the examiner going with this particular question? What is, who is being included in this particular content? Why is this content relevant to me or the audience at large? And how is it going to impact us in our real experiences in life or real life experiences? All right, so ask yourself those leading questions when dealing with the comprehension. Then please read again. And this time you focus your attention on the questions. Find the question word and then understand what the examiner is asking of you there. Then read again. And once you've read that second or third time, you now answer the questions and then make sure you go back, read the question, read your answer, and see that they tie in with each other and move on with the next questions. Okay. If you do not find the link in what you are saying here, then know that something is not making sense and you need to review that before you give your exam paper in. So checking your answers, that's very important. Now, we had a text in the 2021 NSC paper which dealt with the old people and how society viewed them as having made a mess of the world around them, as opposed to the youngsters who are now the ones with all these weird and wild and, magnanimous dreams that they have, for example. And they are now the inspiration that we are looking for to go forward and make a better world for us. So this text very much dealt with what the viewpoint is that the older ones have made a mess and the reliance is now on the newcomers or the young ones to take this world or its ideas forward into a more prosperous life for us all. All right. So that is what this text was talking about. Now, just by reading, for example, the first part of it, which is the title of the text. The old have made a mess of the world. The young will save us. Already in your head, you should be thinking, okay, old people, meaning like my parents or my teachers or my grandparents and all those people before me, the old have messed up the world. And the reliance now in terms of what this writer is saying is that I, as part of the youth and people in my age group, are now going to save the old people from the mess they have made. That's the kind of idea you need to be thinking of. Right. And then when you go through the paragraph, let's say, for example, it says here, world leaders are meeting in Spain to decide whether or not to bother with preventing the destruction of the earth, like people in a vehicle speeding towards a cliff, deciding whether to brake or swerve, or maybe they are simply chatting about other things. Already there in those first 3 lines, grade 12s, you should be thinking, here's an imagery coming through very clearly of people in a car that is speeding down a road, for example, and swerving and veering on all sides of the road, trying to avoid crashing into something, okay? So that is what is being said there. Now, linking that to the title, meaning the old people are like the people in the vehicle, who are veering around, who are, almost lost, uncontrollable in what they have done, messing up, or they just simply just having a good time. That's the idea there, right? Like in those two. Powerful senior citizens in the US, Trump, Giuliani, and Biden, are trading playground insults. And the middle aged people who make serious decisions about how to handle this emergency seem incapable of thinking beyond the singularly imagination killing criterion of short term profit. So it's obviously signaling some kind of doom here, isn't it? I began writing this column at a Youth versus Apocalypse demonstration in San Francisco. The protest, which was led by teens, of course, as well as some of the 20-something members of the Sunrise Movement and Extinction Rebellion, took place in front of BlackRock, the world's largest investor in fossil fuels. There was a little cluster of mothers at the demonstration too, with babies and toddlers whose life expectancy, barring catastrophes, extends into the 22nd century. It was a Fridays for Future demonstration taking place all over the world with 500,000, mostly young people in Madrid. So here is the idea of the old messing up, swerving, veering, almost going to crash into something and just making a mess of things, whereas the youngsters are now going against that. Okay, sometimes I think that our species was, for most of its history, a child. It had limited capacity to harm and thus a limited responsibility to do no harm. We could kill one another, but we did it without napalm and nuclear weapons. We could think small because we were altering the earth with hunting, grazing, farming, foraging, and building. But most of our traces would vanish, and most of our impact left no lasting damage. With the Industrial Revolution and its reliance on fossil fuels, and with technologies capable of changing the earth on a more profound scale, childhood harmlessness faded into the past for those who wielded those powers and used those tools and benefited from it all. Humans ceased to be mere mortals, but our imaginations and ethics lagged behind our impact. For 2 centuries, we have been in sort of a wild adolescence. Wild adolescence mean, reckless, not thinking, not worried about the impact, to pay attention, or to lose to those who point out that there are fatal consequences. So the idea is that for years on end, we have not been taking this seriously. All right. We are on the brink. Now he is saying, here's the interjection. All of this has happened. At this point, we are at the brink. In order for us to retreat from that brink, the human adolescence must end. So in other words, he's saying, here's the idea coming across. We need to change now. All the messes that we've made so far is going to just lead us to a little more catastrophe. Rather stop it now, or we're going to crash head on into the rock structure in front of us. Okay? And that is what you will get while you're reading the text. And you should be working like this. All right? Let's look at paragraph 8, for example. It says, paragraph 7. Many of the significant adults in the room, this is talking about obviously the conference they are having on climate chaos, are 16 or 20 or 27, such as Greta Thunberg and the thousands of youth like her who are less visible but no less committed. So he's saying, or she's saying, that there are youngsters who can make an impact, but because they're young, they are not heard or are not seen. Okay? But they definitely can bring about change that's going to give us success in the near future. And our recklessness as old people need to stop so that this can take place. So teens from Nigeria to Alaska are doing their utmost for the climate, but they control no shares, have no votes, sit on no boards. They need us just as we need them. So she's saying that these youngsters have all these innovative ideas to change things, to bring out a better society, to allow us to have a longer time of living. But what's happening? The old people have messed up here. And these youngsters are not given the opportunity to showcase those things. They don't have the votes, they don't have the shares, they don't have the space to do that. They are the leadership at this moment, youth who are thinking about 2100, who are ready to change everything and who understand the gravity and scale of the catastrophe. So the idea is the youngsters understand how grave the situation is, whereas the old timers haven't understood that. They think everything is still honky dory. All right. So we are saying that they have the idea to realize that we are in a state of emergency and therefore we need to move away from that. Okay. And then here is text B. Now, all those ideas are very much then showcased in text B. You can see it. That here's the little girl who is having the hashtag there to slam down what is being happening. The giant is global establishments who are just having all the shares, having all the votes, having all the say, but are making a mess out of it. Whereas the youngsters who can take action can now derail them completely and put things right, and they need to be given that opportunity to do so. So there's text B there as well for you. Now, let's look at some questions based on that. I've dissected that text for you, and let's see how the questions were phrased and how they were looking for answers for this. Right, so first question, what message does the writer convey in the first sentence, which is world leaders are about other things. So we're going to the first sentence in paragraph 1. We read the text, notice the mark allocation, which means I need to have a clear idea that is coming through. This is a comprehension type question, meaning you are required to recall the information on the writer's point of view in the first sentence. The answer should have been something like this. The writer's message is that the world leaders are meeting to discuss climate change or threats, but are not showcasing any sense of urgency in dealing with the matter. So they are just gossiping and carrying on as if there's nothing seriously going on. And that's how you would get your 2 marks for mentioning that there is this idea that they are meeting to discuss climate change or threats to climate situations, but there's no sense of urgency. And that is the message that the author is trying to get through to us. Right. The second one then is referring to paragraph 2. Notice we got to go back to paragraph 2 and look at that paragraph. Okay, it's saying, discuss the importance of mentioning the participants in various protests. Now, you know, I mentioned the one about Greta and the group there, so you need to look at that. You are required to give a commentary here based on your experience in relation to the text. So an answer would be something like this. A discussion is needed, say an explanation. The common factor among all the participants is that they are either young or have young children. So those ladies with the with the children there who are pregnant as well, they were part of the protest, right? Implying that preservation of the earth is crucial for the future generations to come. Those are how you're going to get your 2 marks. That's how you're going to get your 2 marks there. Or secondly, young people are committed to making a change towards preserving the earth. And that is why they are protesting against these corporate giants. Okay? 2 marks there. 1.5. How does the diction in paragraph 5, how does the writer use the diction in paragraph 5 to convey his message? Firstly, it's a technical type question. It's dealing with the diction in relation to paragraph 5. What is the impact of the words that is there on you as the reader? You should answer this using your keywords from the question itself. If you provided a technical answer, you are guaranteed a 1 mark, and therefore to get the second mark, you need to expand and link that to the text. 3 marks, okay? Right, so the answer. Firstly, the urgency of recognizing the peril is foregrounded by emotively charged words. For example, on the brink, act with restraint. All these are showing a sense of urgency in addressing the vulnerability of the climate. And that's how you would get your 3 marks there. The adjective, for example, dire, in conjunction with the list of disasters, that's flood, fire, superstorms, those are the words being used there, is intended to convey his feelings, the writer's feelings, about the harsh reality of climate change so that the reader will act responsibly. All right, so there's the 1 mark for mentioning the diction that is being used. All right, that's given to you there in conjunction with what is being said in the text, and then linking it to the idea of the urgency must come through there. And that's how you would get the 3 marks for that question. All right, so please remember the comment is essential when you are dealing with the relevance of the diction to the content that is being discussed there. All right, so take the diction, look at it in terms of the intention of what the writer was looking at when writing this particular text, all right? And then discuss or comment on whether it is appropriate or not, okay? Or appropriately used or not, those words. 3 marks for 1 example of diction fully discussed, okay, would be given there as well. 1.6, comment on the writer's tone in paragraph 6 with close reference to the text. Notice comment and tone, again, technical terms. The question verb is to comment. That's testing your level 4 and level 5, the impact of it. And what? Impact of what? The tone in paragraph 6. In other words, the attitude of the writer as he's written certain things in paragraph 6. So whenever you ask to comment, just remember that you have to look at both the pros and the cons. You have to give us a fair, unbiased, value-loaded judgment. And when you have the word critically then attached to it, you have to offer then an objective viewpoint then based on what you are reading. Okay, so the answer there was the writer gives instructions in prescriptive, commanding, persistent, or urgent, any of those tone words, motivational tone in. We must expand our imaginations, and those who come cannot just annihilate. So there's the words given to you, the tone words given that you have to give us, and you have to link it to the specific words used in the text that are showcasing the tone. And then you're saying to us the comment. The writer urges the reader to take action by repeating the words such as we must. So the repetition of the words we must says that he is impressing on us to act immediately without restraint. Right, he wants to change our mindset towards climate change. So 1 for the identification of tone and 2 marks for the commentary given clearly there. Right, 1.8, refer to lines 62 to 63, talking about juvenility and maturity all the way to much you care. You will read that line when you are tackling this particular paper again. In your opinion, is this final sentence an effective conclusion to the writer's argument? Justify your response. So we're saying you have an opinion, yes. Look at it in relation to the last sentence in the conclusion, and then tell us if that sentence is linked to the writer's argument, and justify whether it is linked or whether it is appropriate or not. Okay, so again, a technical element here. The use of the quote makes it personal and therefore emotional, and this would give you 1 mark. When you offer your point further with a justification of the artifacts being used, you get the 2nd and the 3rd mark. All right. So the final sentence leaves no room for debate. It's a resounding vote of confidence in the ability of the youth to set things straight and to rebuild this planet. So in other words, he's stating that the young ones will save us because the old ones have messed up. Plain down and simple idea in the final sentence being expressed. It is effective as the sentence sums up the argument that maturity is not synonymous with age. but with wisdom and responsibility. So he's implying that the youngsters, they might be young, but they can still make a difference and act responsibly. So an ineffective response is usually not likely in this instance. However, it'll be marked on merit. Right, then with regards to text B, where we had Greta Thunberg there, the little girl with the hashtag throwing the hashtag at the giant, okay? Why has the little girl arrived with the two hashtag speech bubbles? Notice it's here you have to give detailed reasons showcasing your understanding. So the two hashtag slogans are her weapons, her online tools, for example, against the establishment, and they are representing the defiance. Okay, hashtag how dare you, and a call to action, for example, the hashtag action. That is her weapons against the global establishment. Right, a second option would be the resistance movements slogans are depicted as physical weapons or online tools. That's a very simplistic way of putting the answer down there. Right, 11. To what extent does text B reinforce ideas expressed in paragraph 7 of text A? And here is the linking question I spoke to you about. Paragraph A to text A to text B, and in this case we're saying paragraph 7 in text A to text B. Okay, so specifically focusing on a paragraph in text A. You need to find the link between the text, state the link in your response, and you'll earn the 1 mark. Then you draw on text A and text B completely, summarizing them, and then giving that final one, the comment where you address the issue in each text, and then you substantiating that idea with your own answer in terms of the reasons as to why it's applicable or not. All right. So the answer was paragraph 7 of text A focuses on the leading role that young people are playing in saving the planet. Text B fully supports the message in paragraph 7 of text A. In text B, Greta challenges the status quo and is undaunted by the power of the global corporates who are compromising the environment. Her environmental maturity and leadership are evident. In other words, when she is striking down that giant with hashtag how dare you or hashtag action, she is making her impact against this corporate giant by taking action to stop what is being done. Her action emanates from her understanding the gravity and the scale of the catastrophe. In other words, if we continue the way we are right now, we are headed for disaster, and Greta, as representing the youth, has realized that if we do that, we're going to head for disaster, and she's taking action against us as the corporate people. Right. The businessman or the political figure in text B represents those who yield corporate power on boards, cast votes, and own shares, referenced in paragraph 7. There's the reference particularly to text A, paragraph 7. Despite their unlimited powers, they cannot withstand the young activists. In other words, they are shaken by what the young advocate here is doing in terms, or advocating for here in terms of change your ideas, or we headed for disaster. She may be less visible, but she is no less committed to what is at stake. So she's challenging them to change their viewpoints. All right. So you're going to get 4 marks for linking both the text together and obviously then giving us the final answer there, or the final link. Okay. Right. And once again, my gremlin is irritating me. Let's try. And there we go. Right. Now we go on to section B of your paper 1, which is the summary. Right. This is the summary that is taking, looking at a text given to you. You're taking it from 200 or 250 words and you're bringing it down to 90 words maximum in question 2. All right. Please, we are looking for the gist, the key idea, or the main points that are worth noting in the text. So your quick wins for this, part of that strategy, that home language strategy we are aiming at for this year. Please, your teachers will be drumming it into your head from the beginning of the year to now. Familiarize yourself with that strategy where you have to get a minimum of at least 45 to 50 marks in this paper. All right, 50%, sorry, in this paper. Please read the original text to get a feel of what it's all about. Again, linking to how the comprehension is done. Read the text again and highlight the key words or key information here that you want to use. Now, all of this will be relevant when you have understood there is a statement given to you and then there is a question given to you on what we want you to summarize about. Okay, please follow the instruction. Please also be accurate, clear, and straightforward. Use your own words as far as possible for grade 12s. If you're struggling to put the text in your own words, then there is another way, which I'll show to you at the end of the lesson, that you can score at least 7 out of 10, even if you're having a problem with this. Okay? You have to use your interlinking words, please, to assist you as far as possible to link one idea to the next idea. Use your full sentences and leave out examples, lengthy descriptions, and any direct speech that's given. So how do you do the summary? You strip away all the unnecessary details in terms of extra words or examples. You then focus on the main core of this particular text. You try to find the key words and phrases that still manage to capture the gist of what is being said. And then you are trying to capture the main idea that has crucial details, and then you're supporting that with a few words of your own. All right. So what should you do? Pull out the main ideas. So in each paragraph you read, highlight the idea or two in that particular paragraph. Focus on your key details. Use your keywords and phrases when you're formulating the final response, and break down the larger pieces or larger ideas. How do you do that? Look for the topic sentence or the main sentence, and then look for an idea around it. And then you'd know this is the important sentence I need to include in my summary. And please write only enough to convey the gist of the article. Be succinct and write in complete sentences. So focus on the topic. Read all the instructions very carefully. It will say, do this in no more than 90 words. And that's what it means, not more than 90 words. Look at all aspects that you need to summarize. Please write the topic in bold letters at the top of your planning page so that you know where you're going and what you want to say here. And then read the identified topic before you then formulate your final response. So identify the main point in each paragraph. Make sure they are relevant, each point. Write in your own words as far as possible. Remove any extra information in terms of words or examples or direct speech given to you. Be accurate, concise, straight to the point. Focus on the core of the matter and try and find the key words or phrases that still capture the message of the text. Right. Then try to capture the main ideas, and also please avoid writing in the first person, please. You are reporting on what you've said here or read here. All right. And then look at what we are looking for when marking and how you mark the summary. We give you 7 marks for each of your points given to us that are relevant to the question being asked. And then we allocate 3 marks for language. Now, how do we give the language mark? Grade 12s. If you have written out your paragraph and you have not quoted word for word from the text. In other words, when I say quoted, I mean word for word, punctuation for punctuation mark, letter for letter. Okay? If you have not taken it exactly as it is in the text and given it to us, then we are saying if you're having 1 to 3 points which are correct, we give you then 1 mark for your language. If you're having 4 to 5 points which are correctly identified and making sense, you're getting 2 marks allocated for the language. And then if you have 6 to 7 points which are totally relevant again to the question that is being asked, you're getting then the 3 language marks, which then gives us 6 plus 3 or 7 plus 3, 4 plus 2 or 5 plus 2, 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1 or 3 plus 1, for example. All right. Now, if you have quoted, in other words, word for word what the text is saying as an answer to a question, we're then saying if there's 6 or 7 points which are correct, we don't give a language mark. 4 to 5 points which are correct, you will get a language mark of 1. And if you've got 2 to 3 points which are correct, you will then get your 2 language marks. All right. So in the summary, you need to delete descriptions, replace the technical terms with your own words, keep the main idea as far as possible, list the concepts identified in each paragraph, and then write the 7 points down in a complete paragraph. If you quoting 7 direct quotes, you're still scoring 7 out of 10. Right, and then here's the worksheet for you to work through. This was a summary in the 2022 exam paper, NSC, Young People as Emerging Leaders. Okay, it was given to you like that, and you had to do the following: read the particular article and then summarize it. So we asked you to use the following main points, and this is what the memo looks like. So when you're reading through this or going through this PowerPoint again in your own time, please remember that we've got basically how it's set up is, let me go back there, where we've got the main idea is on one side, we've got the quotations, and then we've got points which are linked to that quotation. So if it's put into your own words, it should be sounding like this. For example, if you said point 1, we should be focusing on intergenerational work. They should be involved in all discussions. We are saying, in our own words, the same thing. We're saying young people should be given the opportunity to engage in discussions with adults. Okay, so grade 12s. The only way you are going to get the summary is, even if I try and answer the summary for you, it's not going to work out. You need to read the summary, look at the question that's given to you and the instruction that is there. Okay, it will say to you, for example, text B talks about da 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 da. Okay, that is the statement. Then the question is saying to you, in a paragraph of 90 words, for example, summarize or discuss, okay, the following that they want you to look at. So you need to find the 7 points that are asked in relation to that particular text, and then you formulate your paragraph. Okay. So please go back and look at the summary of the 2022, 2023, 2024 paper. And even if you get your hands on the 2025 NSC paper that was done now in the June examination, go over that and get a sense of how the summary is tested. I'm sure also in class, ma'am or sir has done a lot of summaries with you. So please go through and answer those summaries that they are giving to you, and make sure you know how to do it, because then you're saving your time for other questions that may be more difficult to work with. All right, so that's your summary there in terms of what answers we are looking for. 7 points. In this case, we gave 10 points, but we were looking for 7 points already, obviously. Please remember that it's not necessary for an examination to rephrase the entire passage in your own words, which often leads to misinterpretation of the original text. So it's not necessary. As long as you can find the 7 points, grade 12s, and you understand that these 7 points are relevant to the question, put it down, and that will assure you the marks. because all you need to do is you may then need to slightly change one or two things in that point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, and you would still score the minimum of 7 out of 10. Now, this is a cheat point. And if you are that struggling candidate that really wants to make sure that you maximize the summary mark of 7 out of 10, then follow this. Find the 7 points in relation to the question, write it down, and then finally put the paragraph together if you can, and then you'll still get your 7 out of 10. If you're that candidate who can read and find the 7 points and then put those 7 points into your own words as well, and still be able to make sense of what's happening, then you guaranteed your 7 plus 3, giving you a mark of 10 out of 10 for the summary. So this particular part of the paper is very easy to get marks if you just understand how to do it. Don't get caught where you are losing 7 marks, for example, because you're just lazy to do the summary. Attempt it, because you definitely can get those 7 marks. In the comprehension, target, as I said to you, those questions that we went through here. Look at the fact that if I know how to answer these questions, I am guaranteed to get at least 12, 13, or 14 marks in the comprehension. And if you're taking that 13 marks plus 7, you're well on your way already for 20 marks out of 70, and you need to then get another 8 or 10 marks to do well in this paper, okay, or to pass this paper out of 70. Okay, so please, you can obtain more marks if you do the following as well with regards to summary. Substitute just a single word with a synonym. Remove a word from the original sentence, or you can add a word as well if you feel like you want to, all right, just to change it a bit. Just changing a punctuation mark is also possible, but that punctuation mark which you remove should, and add another one, that one that you've added should not change the meaning of the sentence, okay? So be careful how you use your punctuation marks here. Changing the tense of the sentence definitely is possible, and then the order of the words in the sentence as well is very possible. But again, make sure the meaning of the sentence is still there. All right, so the gist must still come out clearly when you have structured your final response by doing these things. All right, so please, these are important question words you need to go through. Go back in your own time. All right, go over what the word analyze means. How do I use that word, or how do I answer a question using that term? Look at the word comment, for example. What do they want me to do? Okay, should I explain in detail? Yes, you need to. If I'm saying compare something, do I look at the similarities and differences? Okay, important. When I say define something, which doesn't usually appear there, but you need to obviously look at that. All right, words like discuss, definitely important. This is where you have to look at the arguments in terms of what is favoring a particular viewpoint and what's not favoring that particular viewpoint, and make sense of it. Okay, explain, interpret, outline and things are not really important, but explain is important there. Interpret and clarify with reasons for why that is the case. Okay, must be given. Now, my final thought to you on paper 1 is the following, and I please want you to go ahead and study for this paper. It is a paper that does require you to study. It's not just the case of, oh, I know my language and therefore I'm going to get 70 marks. No, you've got to be able to apply what you know in relation to the text given to you. So please revise your old question paper, taking note of the time constraints for each question. Be aware of the mark allocation. Look at the jargon of English, which is important and is a doorway to many questions. Use the exam paper as your resource, so you can make your notes, you can highlight your notes, words on that paper, and it's yours for you to use during that session. Answer your questions in the order of preference that you want to, but remember they must be matching. Question 1.1 must match the answer of 1.1. Okay, because if your numbering is incorrect, you cannot expect the marker to make sense of it. Please bring in examples in your answers that are justifiable, obviously. Practice this exam paper under your time constraints. Make sure that where you are faster on one part of the paper, that you catch up on the other part that you are slow in. There's a significant number of online resources available to you, grade 12. Please go back and use those. You've got these online sessions that we are currently doing for you to ensure that you are prepared for your exams. You have got other links that would be shared with you by your teachers to go on to Google Drive sites, for example, or even links on the Google links. Please go there and find the exam papers and the resources as well. All right. And then in class, I'm sure ma'am or sir has given you an abundance of notes to prepare you for your language paper come the prelim and final. So please go back and revise and refresh your mind on what needs to be known in this paper. So here's another way of looking at dealing with the comprehension. Okay, find the main idea and be able to put that down in about 5 to 10 words maximum on what this article is all about and what about it is important for me to know. That is something you can work on to understand the comprehension. All right. So grade 12s, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this session as well. I hope that paper 1 has been clearly looked at for you with last week's lesson and this week. We've come to the end of paper 1. Go back and look at these videos, work with the papers, and use the hints given to you. In the following lessons, we'll be looking at your paper 3, and then you're going to be basically running into the prelim examinations around the 25th of August going forward. So really, you don't have much time to get yourself into gear. So get there, prepare yourself very well, and make sure you master these skills for this exam paper and get the maximum marks as well. I want to thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and thank you for watching this lesson with us. And until next time, see you soon.